I'll just give you a short brief on what uh, Jika does. Jika primarily is the boring part of the data centers, which is hardcore steel cement construction, fit outs, labor, kind of the engineering, design, fabrication, everything that is primarily to do with what a data center build environment is. So we are a product driven EPC company, primarily to do with the Whitehall fit outs of a data center. Our specialization lies with dealing with the cloud players, the hyperscalers who are building or wanting to build a data center in India. So when we say the digital economy, the digital infrastructure, or anything to do with digital, the primary backbone of that entire digital economy, or every transaction that you do which goes through the internet, the primary infrastructure or the factory of that transactions is primarily data centers. Data centers is a finely tuned environment to keep the servers up and running. So many of you being investors, you keep getting the Nasdaq up and running for 24 hours, or any other exchanges that run 24 hours. Primarily, they happen to do so because there's a finely tuned network and servers running the show behind the scenes. So just to give you backdrop on what has been India's data center infrastructure story. 2019, we were about 350 megawatts of IT load. 2024, we are about 1.03 gigawatt. We have just crossed 1.25 gigawatt milestone. Just to give you a perception, 2024, the global data center capacity was 122 gigawatt, vis-a-vis India was standing at 1.2 gigawatt. So we are barely percent of the global capacity, despite being the 1/7 population of the world. So why all of a sudden there's a lot of buzz about data centers in India lately? There's one company that has filed for capital markets because, as somebody was mentioning a lot about AI, I think Mr. Balpani was saying that AI has to do a lot with what is going to happen across the country in future. So all the AI workloads primarily are high compute power capacity requirements. The OTT markets have grown post-COVID. The cloud adoption has grown post-COVID, and the government policy for bringing the personal data. So there's a DPDP called the law called DPDP, which primarily is to do with the data protection of its own citizens, the sovereign data policy or the sovereign storage policy, where government has pushed the banking data or the cloud data to be remained within the country. So these few, plus now recently the cost factor of building, operating and managing a data center, relatively India has become very competitive compared to the global markets. These few reasons are the primary growth drivers of why the data center sector in general is growing aggressively in India. So to 2025, we are doing about 600 megawatts, out of which around 200 megawatts is already commissioned up and live. And in the next 3 to 4 months, I mean this financial year, the industry overall has a target of 1.8 gigawatt as being live. With respect to the demand, the real estate demand is expected to be about 10 to 12 million square feet. This number is going to go up with respect to the vision that 2030 has been made up by the industry overall. The investment number itself in 2026 is about $6 billion. The total investment up to 2030 would be nothing less than 15 to 17 billion dollars only for the base infra. The chips, the semicon, the core infrastructure of IT is not part of this number. So if you calculate that, this would be nothing less than $50 to $60 billion of investment that is expected from this sector. So, what does Jika primarily do? Jika is into providing some passive infrastructure for cooling with respect to the support systems, architectural fit outs of a data center, which primarily ensures that the data centers keep their uptime of 99.99%, which is not letting you stop any of your work that you do on your phone, laptop, or anything to do with internet. Critical equipments in data center primarily are substations, UPS, battery switchgear, and then for the cooling there is fan wall units and chillers and the piping related to the cooling systems. These are some of the critical equipments in a data center. Another active equipments are fire safety systems, CCTVs, the structural false ceilings and hot aisle containments where primarily Jika specializes. So this is basically the wider ecosystem where aligned and non-aligned people or the sectors come into play where data centers are building. One is real estate. Secondly is the EPC and design firms, the design consultants, the safety consultants, security consultants, all these come into play. Architecture is a very important part of a data center typically because there's a lot of security and safety and directional angles to a design of a data center. Equipment manufacturers like transformers, UPS, batteries, chillers, including some of the Indian OEMs who are trying to enter the data center market. This is the overview of the wider ecosystem of a data center market in general. These are some of the key players that are active in the DC segment as a pure play hyperscale data center developers who build and rent out their data centers to cloud players. Adani Group, of course, is one of the key players. They are in a JV with a global data center company called EdgeNext. SIFI is one of the players. ST Telemedia, Control S, PDG, Equinix, and several other players. We have also heard some listed players also trying to enter the data center segment as a pure play data center operator. Another indirect players of this industry are Reliance because of Jio, primarily to do with internet and submarine cables. Airtel is also one of the large players. Tata Communication is, of course, globally one of the top 10 subsea cable players. Sterlite Technologies is mainly into optical fiber, HFCL of Reliance. Equipment suppliers like ABB, Schneider, these are the players who are into the equipments, and the EPC players like Sterling Wilson so Sterling Wilson, not the solar company, there's a different company. L&T and all the EPC players like Kalpataru, they are all into the EPC game. So, data centers is primarily going to be one of the biggest growth engines or economic drivers because it impacts. So, there's a circular economy of 5x or 6x that happens when a data center is going to be built, going back to the steel, cement, copper, optical fiber, players like us who get into construction of these data centers, primarily doing the fit outs. So the job creation part, the overall economic impact or a circular economy impact when a Microsoft or a Google or a Amazon decides to invest $5 billion to build their data center infrastructure in India, the circular economy effect is almost 4x to 5x. That is where this industry itself will become a more than $100 billion industry by 2030.